26th Club Cubase live stream. My name is Greg Undo and I'm the host of the live stream. And if you have not attended a live stream before, how it works is we can ask questions or in the live chat field. And we could also send questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. When asking questions, if you could indicate the which level of Cubase you're running, so if it's 12, 13, or 14, which level. So if it's a Cubase LE, AI, Artist, Elements, or Pro, or other Steinberg programs, and which operating system, that information is helpful. We should have an index of all of the topics covered in the live stream today pinned to the top of the comments field with timestamps, so you could quickly navigate to various topics. And if when asking questions, if you don't see an immediate response, we will try to get through all the questions chronologically, but if you don't see an immediate response, I may be behind the live chat and answering questions. If we could avoid asking the same questions over and over again, that would be helpful and be appreciated. Just makes us able to get through more questions. If you wanted to search for topics that have been covered in previous live streams, you can go to cubaseindex.com, and we want to thank Jan for setting up that website. There's over 36,000 topics that have been documented there. We also want to give special thanks to Agent K and Jazz Dude, who serve as moderators. They're not Steinberg employees. They just do this out of the goodness of their hearts to make it a better community experience. And also we'll give special props to Jazz Dude for his work with the unofficial Cubase Nation Discord site. It's a wonderful resource of information for Steinberg users. Once again, my name is Greg Undo. I work for Yamaha Corporation of America. I primarily focus on Steinberg products, and I am presenting from just outside of Washington, D.C. area in the United States in Alexandria, Virginia. And if you're watching this live, please feel free to introduce yourself. Just one quick programming note, there will be no live stream this upcoming Friday. It's a holiday in the United States. It's the day after Thanksgiving. So we will be doing our Zoom meetup today. So I just wanted to, I'll go ahead and post the link for the Zoom meetup. We'll start that in about 2 hours. And with that, let's go ahead and get started. All right, we see Tim K from Zeist in the Netherlands. His cat Buddy is waving a paw hello to my cat Steven and Mark Rabin's dog Stella and any other pets. And he's ready to learn. All right, we have Stefan from Sweden. We have Uno Memento checking in from Finland. George checking in from Germany. Tim Weinheimer from Mission Viejo, California. We see Jan from Cubase Index from Stockholm. We see Benny. And Benny asks, first question of the day, why can't MIDI files and loops and samples be previewed Cubase 14 Pro? All right, so let's go ahead and take a listen to it. So I'll just do a new project here. I'm just going to load up just a quick virtual instrument. Okay, so let's say we'll have this instrument open. All right, so MIDI files themselves generally don't have any particular sound that's associated with them, so we may have to pick a particular instrument. So let's come over to my desktop, and I think I have a MIDI file here. Okay, so what we want to do is we could choose our instrument that we want to preview it through. So let's see if this kind of works. Let me just... So what you need to do is just to kind of, when you're previewing the MIDI, so this MIDI doesn't start for a while, but we need to actually tell what we want, what instrument or the destination that we want the MIDI to be previewed through. So again, the MIDI is just going to be kind of the notes to on-off notes. But what we need to tell it to do is to come right over here and what instrument that it's going to be previewed through. A MIDI loop is different than a MIDI file. So a MIDI loop has the appropriate instrument that's defined so that when you preview a MIDI loop, it loads up the instrument and then we'll preview it through the correct sound. But a MIDI file doesn't have that link. It's just a limitation of the MIDI file format. But you will need to come over here and just make sure that you have a preview instrument to work with there, Benny. All right, so we see from George is asking, in the MIDI list editor, is there a way to filter out specific notes like only the snare drums, D1, so the list only shows the snare drum entries? All right, let's take a look at it. I think we could do that in the list editor. Okay, so I'm going to come over here. Let me look at our part here in the list editor. So the list editor is kind of a list of all of the particular events. So let's say I want to choose only D1 notes, and we only want to see the D1 notes. So what we could do now is you may have to activate the filters. So if we go to this setup in the upper right hand, let me clear my throat. Let's go to the setup window and make sure that filters are enabled. So we want to say, I'm going to select this particular note and we'll go to our focus and we can say event types and subtypes. So now I'm only seeing the D1 notes. So if we choose no focus, we can see all of the events in the list. So again, if you don't see the focus area, just come over here, make sure that you had filters turned on, and then select the event that you want to only see that. Come over here and select from the drop-down menu. You want to focus on event types and subtypes. If we just say event types, that will just show only the notes. But if we choose the subtype, that would also include the pitch. So we only see the D1 note right there. All right. Wonderful to see Jazz Dude on. All right, you see Dallas LaRue checking in from Las Vegas. Baranga Danga Jam Sessions is saying hello to everyone. We have Trolls St. Jern just saying hi to everyone and myself. Thank you. And he's checking in from Norway. All right, we have the artist known as Love, hoping that everyone's doing great. Thanks for joining us today. All right, Aaron T Music asks, is it better to increase the volume of the instrument in the VST or with the pre-gain in the channel settings if a library is very quiet? I was making a mistake of trying using plugins for volumes. So I think that most libraries will be, should provide enough gain. Now, there could be times where when we have, let's say, a particular patch, if you are in, let's say, a string patch, sometimes I get this question a lot of when someone's in, let's say, like a sustain patch. So what we can do here is, if depending on the articulation, it could be that you need another MIDI CC. So if I play back this cello sustain patch, it seems very soft until I move my modulation wheel. And this will allow us to kind of gradually increase. Just like a real string player would manipulate their bow, or a wind instrument or brass instrument manipulate their breath to do swells. So if it's really low, you know, just make sure it's not a CC. That's, you know, it could be like CC1 or CC11 are the typical CCs when you run into patches like that, but I would try to get it the level in the instrument. The instrument should give you a good level, and then if it's still not a good enough level, then I would go to, if you go to the pre area on the channel strip, and you can do that right here, you can get an additional 48.2 dB of gain. But sometimes if you're making up for something that's wrong, you may get a little bit of noise, not too much, but I would try to approach the instrument first. That would be what I would do. All right, artist known as Love is just saying, please don't forget to hit the like button, and thank Jazz Dude for all the work he does. All right, Dallas LaRue asks, when you add a drum machine pattern to a project, is there any way to render it to audio or change it to MIDI, or do you have to export it that way? And can a pattern be extended past one measure? Okay, so let's take a look. We'll come over, let's say we have a pattern on this particular track here. I'll just generate a pattern. So let's say as we listen to this, so randomly generated pattern, I'm going to drag it to the track. Now once we drag it to the track, this will show up just like an event. If I want this, if this is a one measure pattern, if I want to duplicate it, I can just come right over here and we could duplicate the pattern just like any other event. Now if I want to, one of the cool things that we could do is, let's say if I undo that duplication, I could create I'm going to do a duplicate track version just by pulling in a list here. And then if we want to convert that into MIDI, all we would have to do is click on the number and we can convert the pattern event to a MIDI part. So now we can have the MIDI part and we could just drag it over, and everything that we're doing now is in the MIDI editor. But since I made a duplicate track version, I could just go right back to the pattern editor here. So we double click, we can see that this pattern will play for one measure. Now, if I erase this pattern, the pattern editor sequencer will automatically turn on. So now that I play, I can just have this particular pattern just play and be in sync with the sequencer. So, and if we wanted to now, let's say, render that as audio, all I would have to do is, let's say, from the MIDI event itself, we could just use our typical, let's do a render in place. So we'll just come right over here. And now we could render in place and do it as audio, as we could see. So you can drag it in, you can drag the pattern in, come over, make all sorts of copies of the pattern, and then if you click in the number, you could have the pattern converted to a MIDI part, which can then be rendered. All right, we have Marius Brewer checking in. Thanks for joining us. Diamond District Studios checking in from Cape Town. All right, Witty Music asks, is there a way to turn audio track versions into separate audio tracks and have them automatically named? When I bounce each track version to lanes, nothing is named. It only says lane 1, lane 2, etc. Okay, so let's take a look. So let's say if we're doing comping here. So let's say we have our lane. So I think that it's going to be carried over from, let's say if I go to my description here, and let's see if we label these. Okay, so I'm just going to, in the description. So now let's come over and I'll right click. So I want to take these lanes and convert them into tracks. So we're going to right click and say create tracks from lanes. So the event names are carried over, but the track names aren't. So if we come here, we can see kind of the, but it's just going to kind of show up as the comping. But the event names, which is can automatically be carried over. And I don't think that there's an easy way to do that, but it's generally, because I don't think that these lanes, let's see if I do change the description in the lanes here for the file, if that makes a difference. So I'll get rid of these tracks. Yeah, so it looks like that's fixed. But if you rename the description, that the event names will be carried over. But I don't think there's any way to change that behavior, unfortunately. I'll pass it along. All right, wonderful to see Fly V checking in from Winnipeg. We have Roland from Sussex, England. Is Roland stuff? All right, inactive user says, hi Greg, how are you doing today? How can I import a track preset file into my freshly installed Cubase? So your track presets, if we save them as a profile manager, we can have those user track presets automatically carried over. We could also come over, so let's go to like your media bay. And we will come over to user content, and let's go to track presets. Now let's say audio. Let's see if I have some. I'll just make one here quickly. See if my Mac will wake up here. Okay, so I'm going to save a track preset. Okay. All right, so let's say when I select a particular event here, I think that we can right click on the event. So once, and then reveal in Finder, and this will take you to the folder where all of the user track presets. So you could do reveal in Finder or reveal in Explorer, and then you could copy the track presets your track presets from your old computer to the new one. So once again, right click, come over like in the media bay. We'll go home. We'll say, let's go to user presets, track presets. You could choose audio, select one. You could just create one like we did if you don't have any on your system, and then just select reveal in Finder or reveal in Explorer, and then you could just drag and drop directly into that folder. All right, second question, is it possible to print an ARA plugin into my recorded audio clip? Best regards. So once we have an edit, so we're going to run this as, let's say, an ARA extension. We'll come over here, we'll double click. If we make changes, what you want to do here is make track extension permanent. So right where you load the extension, you can just come right here, and you'll see once you have an extension on an event to make the track extension permanent. All right, and we see Martin checking in from Germany. Great, thanks for joining us. We have Plention just saying hello to everyone. We have ProWash DFW, hope you're doing well. So we see Tireman Guitars. What Mac OS are you using, Greg? I think it's Monterey. Let me check. Yeah, so Monterey is at 12.5. That's what I'm using currently. All right, so we have Tony Trunzo checking in from Australia. Thanks for joining us in the middle of the night from Australia. All right, so Jazz Dude switched to the latest Mac OS Sequoia on Sunday, and it works well. I was worried if it works and had no backup. So. All right, David Griffiths says hi from Dave in Wales, UK. Thanks for your consistently helpful approach to the wider Cubase community, Greg, and supporting crew on this live stream. So thank you for the kind words. And I'm happy, and I'm sure others are happy to help and build such a wonderful community. All right, so wonderful to see Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas. I believe the virtual ice cream distribution will begin. All right, Flyv asks, why is it when I preview loops and samples, they're so loud? I have them turned all the way down. So make sure that, when you're doing this, so generally, when we're doing previews of samples, so say if I come over here and we start previewing, you will have a volume control here. Now, that is basically going to work the same, because this event that we're previewing isn't on a track. So that goes through the control room. So make sure that you have like the audio set up here, and then you have the control room, and that the control room volume is set up. And if you adjust that and it's still loud, make sure that in your outputs, like I have my audio going out to my Yamaha HS7s, and when I go to my output here, we can choose, I choose to have this not connected, otherwise it could be doubly bust. So the audio could go out of the control room and out of the outputs, and you could adjust the level in the control room and you still hear it really loud. So if you're utilizing the control room, make sure that your outputs are defined, but that they're set to not connected, because we're going to send the audio instead through the control room. So give that a try, Vince, and let us know. All right, Diamond Pick Studio, need a link to upgrade Cubase 13 to 14. Can't see the buy button. All right, let's take a quick look. So let's go to steinberg.net. All right, and everyone can check out all the great stuff that's on sale for the Cyber Deals Days. So it's like Cubase 14. So there should be, like when you go to the main website, you can just click on Buy Cubase 14, whether you want it to be Pro, Artist, or Elements. So let's say Pro. And then if you have Cubase 13, you want to do the updates. So we can say update. If you're going Cubase Pro 14 from Cubase Pro 13, you should do that. And then click add to cart, and then you could buy right there. So let me know if you tried doing it straight that way, or if you're going through a dealer. So you see Jazz Dude says, problem is he has a VE Pro and Contact 8 seem to be a bit buggy, got some crashes. Yeah, I was helping someone on a one-on-one basis the other day, and their Contact 7 wasn't liking Sequoia Mac OS, so they're kind of stuck a little bit. All right, we have Brian Sawyer checking in from Beulahville, North Carolina. Tyron Guitar says he has Cubase 14 on trial. It's free for 60 days. All right, Millard Brown is wishing everyone that's observing Thanksgiving this week to have a great week, and everyone else have a wonderful week as well. All right, so see George from Germany just says, thanks, Greg. I felt that this is doable. I didn't highlight the D1 before the focus function. So, all right. All right, so we see Wilfried from Bochum, Germany on. We see that Danielle is working. Thanks for joining us today. Cornell joining from the Netherlands. See Dallas LaRue just saying, wow, thanks, Greg. I love that new drum machine. Yeah, it's pretty great for getting stuff done quickly. All right, Michael Graybill checking in from Dallas, Texas. And we see that Michael Teams is granted Jan from Cubase Index 1 gallon of fresh Texas strawberry ice cream. Sounds delicious. All right, so we see Anthony, Jose, Maddie. Is there a way to switch scenes in VST Live using MIDI? Need to move between piano, lead, and pad patches, preferably a third party like Contact seamlessly without cutting the sound. So if you have it in the timeline, it will automatically do the program changes, and it won't do the cut off of the last note, so the last note will continue to play. So, if you have it in your timeline and you have the different programs set up to come in during the verse, chorus, the solo part, it won't cut off the other parts automatically. So once you have it in the timeline, you should be all set. All right, so Aaron T. Music says, what would be a typical master chain? So everyone could have different different master chains, and I always tend to I try to always approach each project differently, because one master chain that you do for one project to me may not be as applicable for another project. So I always try to do as much as we can, just kind of utilizing what's available. So a lot of people would use maybe a touch of EQ. Frequency is a great plugin for this. This is very much a surgical EQ, where we could EQ the stereo or the mid as middle part of the panning spectrum, or sides independently, or we could do left, right independently on one particular channel. So if we wanted to come here and just this one band, I wanted to boost the left channel and cut the right channel, we could also apply dynamic EQ control to it. So once that's enabled, a lot of people will then maybe try to make things sound a little wider. So like a multi-band imager. So when you go to the imager plugin, we could come over here. So we could say, I want the low frequencies to be a little narrower and my high frequencies to be wider so that the bass doesn't get all washy. And then people will often have, you know, maybe like a multi-band compressor, your dynamics. So if you wanted to have like a multi-band compressor so that each frequency range could get compressed, and then maybe followed by some type of limiter. So if you wanted to come over, like if you wanted to have squasher or just a typical limiter, so that would be often what people would use. And then maybe the final stage is going to be the dither. So if you want to go to like the Lin dither plugin, so that as you're going between different bit depths and sample rates, that the dithering will be applied. So, but that's a pretty typical master bus chain. But again, try to approach every project differently, because every project, you know, will have different requirements for it. All right, so we have Catherine Leduc just saying hi from southern France, and a waving paw from her two cats to all tending pets. All right, it's good that we get the pets involved. All right, we see I've received 1 gallon of fresh Texas strawberry ice cream for my family and myself. My son will be happy. It's his last day of school before his Thanksgiving break. All right, so we see did they ever fix under MIDI remote the ability to activate comps saturation by clicking a button? I go to selected track strip and activate plugin. These used to work on any Cubase. Let's take a look. Didn't know if it was a problem before, but we'll look. So let's go to channel strip. All right, so let's say if we want to power on, let me go to my MIDI remote. Okay, so let's see if we can. All right, so let's apply this. Let's get to I'll activate the plugin here. And let's activate the compressor plugin. And the limiter. So now if we just come over here to this selected track, I will it doesn't look like it's working. All right, let me try a different approach here quickly. right, so the bypass plugin works. Let me see what happens if we have like on the gate. So when we come over to, so let's see if we could activate the compressor. So once the plugin is on, we could bypass it. And let's see if we could edit. Okay, so bypass works. Looks like activate doesn't, and the edit plugin doesn't work. I'll pass that along and play around with it. So thanks for pointing that out. All right, Plentian asks, how can I change a kick sound or any drum sound or my own sample after recording is chosen? Full drum kit. Okay, there's a couple different approaches. If you have like a live recording, what we could do is we can kind of come over here, and as we listen to, let's say I want to load up a sample here. So let's say we're listening to our drums. All right, so if we wanted to take the kick drum here, so let's say we'll solo the drums. Not sure where the synth part is coming from. Okay, so let's say I come over here and we're looking for, I think I want to find kicks. All right, so let's say I want that kick. So I'm going to make a sampler track. All right, and I could just come over and say, okay, I want to take this kick. Let's double click. We'll go to, let's say, our hit point tab. We're going to edit the hit points, and we could adjust our threshold. And what we're doing is basically when we have tracks that aren't kick, we don't want the hit points there, like we'll have some toms and snares, hi-hats. So I'm going to select this particular sampler track. And then what I want to do is just come right over here, and we're going to say, let's create MIDI notes. And I'll just say, well, let's make this into C3, which is the root note that I put in. We're going to put it onto the first selected track and hit OK. So now we could listen to. And then if I wanted to update the samples in the sampler track, we get to our sampler, and then I could just and now when the kick comes in, it'll be playing this kick sample. So if we mute the original kicks, now, if we have a sample that's being kind of used repeatedly in a song, like let's say if it's a kick drum that we put on the beat here, and I want that's to make a copy, I will just okay, and let's say we have this particular pattern repeated, and I have just lots of kick drums, and we wanted to replace all these kick drums. All we would have to do is just take another kick drum sample, hold down Shift and drag it over one, and it'll ask you if you want to modify all the events that refer to that same material, and we can say yes. So hold down the Shift key and drag a new sample over, and you could try out different samples just like that. So a couple of different approaches. So if you want to replace a live recording, you could do the hit points and then convert that into MIDI. You could use the new drum machine if you wanted to. So if you want to just come over and let's say if we have a drum machine, we could add a drum track. And then we could say this is our favorite sample, drag it to C1. And from our hit points from our kick track, you want to click on the Create tab, create MIDI notes, and we'll say we're going to put this onto C1 and hit OK. And now as we do this, our kick will now be triggering our drum machine. So a couple of different ways of being able to utilize that. So as we listen to it now, and then when the kick comes back in, so we could just simply generate, move this MIDI event. I didn't place it on the selected track, so let me just so a couple of different approaches there. Okay, so we pair Tico Menon's gotten 1 gallon of chocolate mocha. All right, wonderful to see Sable Winters on from the Bay Area, wishing everyone in the U.S. a happy Thanksgiving. All right, Stephen Biggin asks, how do I save a project with just MIDI and VST instruments so I can share it and it plays back exactly the same? So really, once you save the particular project, all of that, all of the instruments will be recalled for you automatically. So just, so you shouldn't have to do anything special. If you wanted to send it to like a friend, if they have the same instruments, they can have those loaded up right away as well. So, but you don't have to do anything special. It's just literally saving the project. But if I'm misunderstanding the question, let me know. But it's really just saving the project. And, if you don't want to include audio, you could, just disable the audio tracks or remove the audio tracks and just have the MIDI stuff. But just saving the project should do that for you. All right. All right, Michael Teams wants everyone to whack the like button. All All right, so we see Brian Sawyer on, says he loves Banana Nut and he's moving to Yuma next year. All right. All right, so Roland Stuff just says, hi Greg, there seems to be several unmix options in SpectralLayers 11 Pro, which is best for breaking down an audio file to as many individual component parts as possible, please. All right, so let's say if we want to do this, we'll just say, okay, I did kind of the initial one in this project. So if we want to listen to it, just we can... Not sure why I have... Let me just see if I put a goofy effect in my master bus here. Or my control room, maybe. All right, so with this example here, I did the standard unmixed song from the modules. Okay, so this is probably going to be like, you know, we say unmixed song, and when we do unmixed song, we are going to see our vocals, drums, guitars, etc. Now I could take the drum layer, so let's select the drum layer, and I could say let's unmix drums. So we will hit apply. And while that's going on, I'm going to post a link for our Zoom meetup today. Again, we'll start in about an hour and 11 minutes. Okay, so what this is going to be able to do is to take like this, I think, hi-hat cymbals, kick, and snare, and isolate those. All right, and we see that now when we, I'll just do this full screen. So now as we play back, not sure. Not sure why I'm getting a weird sound, but it's not. Sorry, it's just weird sound. Not sure what's causing it. All right, so but we'll come back over here. So now I could take just a kick drum. Let me just make sure I don't have. So here I could now I could take the drums mix and I could just isolate just a kick and a snare. So this way, so I could do kind of the whole song, and then once the whole song is done, we could unmix drums, and there's also unmixed chorus. Like this song doesn't really have any background vocals, but this could separate the lead vocal from the harmony voices. But it often helps if you take like your 2-track song, do an unmix song, and then you could unmix the drums within that. So just select a layer, and if you have lead vocals and background vocals, you can unmix the chorus from that. I can go ahead and just restart my Cubase here real quick. I'm not sure why I'm getting a weird noise, but don't want to be super annoying for everyone. All right, let's read the next question. Okay, wonderful to see Robbie Bowling on from Dallas. And we see Got Your just saying to Stephen Biggins says, it's always good to render as audio files when exchanging projects to make sure it's always going to work. Wonderful to see Mark Rabin. Everyone say hi to Stella, his dog. All right, so I think our weird sound is gone. Sorry about that. All right. So you see John asks, hi, updated to version 14, very happy with the modulator, but I noticed the MIDI trigger mode does not start the envelope when not in loop mode. All right, so let's come over. All right, so let me just take... I haven't had much chance to experiment with this part of the modulators as much, but so let's say we have come here to our modulators, and I want this to modulate that, so I'll just put LFO on that. So then we could choose to modulator triggered by MIDI notes from a MIDI track. Okay, so we could set our re-trigger modes. Okay, so let's say we're just kind of okay, so let's say if we just put notes in here. Yeah, let's see if, so we have those MIDI notes. Let's get to the modulators here. Oh, sorry, take it out of loop mode here. So I could, all right, so I'll just see if I could I'll make these MIDI notes a little shorter as we're working with it here. Okay, so let's watch So I could play around with that and maybe have a better answer for next Tuesday. I haven't really explored that area of the modulators, John. Sorry about that. But I don't want to waste your time with that, so I'll see if I could get it figured out for you. All right. My chat field just jumped on me. All right. All right, Richard Willis just says, hi, just downloaded through Splice. Welcome to the live stream. So you see Marcus Strymon says, hi, Greg, do you know if in Cubase 14 there's a MIDI remote to load channel strip effects? In 13 you could only bypass them, but would have to go into Strap to turn them on by mouse. So I think we just showed a couple minutes ago, it looks like that's the case, but I'll mention it to the team. All right, so we see Just Nice Music sending 4 hearts. All right. All right, so we see Marcus has switched to the X Touch. All right, wonderful to see Daniel checking in from Croatia. So Daniel asks, is there a tool in Cubase where I could visually see holes in frequencies? You need to fill up the frequencies for the full sound, but make holes to make individual things sound clearer. You know, so there, if you wanted to carve out, you know, let's say if we have a project, you know, a lot of times there's people, you know, there's a lot of plugins that kind of use this as kind of a marketing ploy. So, but let's, you know, if you wanted to carve out frequencies of particular tracks, you know, I mean, you could use kind of like, you know, let's come over, you know, you could use parallel, you could use EQ, or even something along the lines, let's say the Imager plugin. So let's say I wanted to carve out like my those frequencies for something to fit in. I could just take the output. But realize when you kind of are carving out frequencies that you're also carving out harmonic overtones as well. So it could be a little more complex than just, you know, just making sure that you don't have, you know, you could have different frequencies, different instruments on the same frequency, and sometimes they clash, sometimes they won't, but it's often, you know, and I see like, you know, a lot of little advertisements and marketing blurbs for plugins that they're going to automatically carve out the frequency, but then you could also mess up the whole harmonic spectrum of the track. But if you really had to do it, just, you know, you could carve out frequencies just using, it's a basic EQ if you needed to do so, if you want to get rid of those frequencies and to fit something in there, and maybe not on a full mix, but on individual tracks you could just use simple EQ plugins or multi-band compression, or an Imager plugin just like that. Okay, another question, can I somehow know what those things or instruments are that fit perfectly in there, or do I have to memorize them or trial and error? So yeah, I always like to envision a mix kind of like a piano keyboard, that, you know, you had to have something in the lower notes, stuff in the high note, in the middle part, stuff in the higher notes, and it's that balance that kind of works. And if you think about a drum kit, it's kind of the same thing. So we could look at a drum kit and say, okay, the lows is our bass drum, the mid is the snare, the highs are just hi-hat and cymbals. And then you could have other frequencies that will be, you know, like maybe our tom-toms. So each of those would represent a frequency. But the, you know, the complex thing with mixing could be that if you have all lows in your kick drum, that the kick drum doesn't sound good. You need the lows, mids, and highs represented within the low frequency for that to sound good. And the same for the snare, the same for the hi-hats. So, you know, just kind of envision it. Don't worry about rules or which part, you know, just kind of experiment. And, you know, when you're starting off, you may make mistakes. And it's like, why doesn't this work? Why does this work? You know, reference it to other stuff. And, you know, you have to make mistakes in order to grow. You can't grow without making mistakes. So. All right, so we see Alan just says from Scotland here, is there a way to record a sequencer transport stop at a particular bar? So I'm not sure if you want to, like, an external sequencer to stop. One of the things that you could do inside of Cubase, if you have markers, and I think that this would work as well. So let's say if we have a marker track, okay, and let's say I'm here at marker 1 in the middle. One of the transport functions that you could do, we go to play range. You could say play until next marker. So as we're listening to this, and as soon as the next marker comes, let's see if since I moved the marker, I may have messed it up, but let's come here, so play project range, play until next marker. All right. Then it gets to the marker. If I did it right. And then it'll just stop. And if you're driving an external sequencer, I think that will stop it sending MIDI clock out to the external sequencer. So try from the transport, set a marker where you want it to stop, and then you could just play project range, play until next marker. All right, so we see Marcus Strayman. Hi, Greg. You see the bank selector in the console under the record and monitor. For me, there's a second one showcased with another 8 channels that follows weirdly. What bug is this? All right, so let's say if I jump. Okay, so I can see my 8 channels. Let's get to my MixConsole. I can see the 8 channels that are being controlled by the control surface. So I'll get to my MIDI remote, and I'll just put this on I'll just get to my nano control, and I'll put this on to mixer. So, make sure that you don't, so let's say if I have, so I can see that my mixer here is set so that these 8 channels, when I hit the bank button, it goes on my nano control, it goes to the next 8. So I'll just come to the MIDI remote, I hit the bank button, it goes to the previous 8. So if you see, so you see there's a second one showcased with another 8 channels that follows weirdly. So maybe you have another MIDI remote that is connected. So, make sure that you don't have another MIDI remote that has bank messages, and it could be like from like your MIDI controller keyboard. But if I had two separate MIDI controls kind of working in tandem, then you might see what you're describing. See, Val says, please don't tell the artist I'm watching the Cubase stream during their sound check. There's a great skill for that. I remember working with the legendary Phil Ramone, and when the artist would be doing their, I remember one time the artist was performing their heart out in the studio, and as soon as he started recording, Phil just cut the control room volume and was watching CNN. And then as soon as the player finished his take, Phil was like, I think that was pretty good. Let's listen to it together. So great way to add 8 minutes to a session. So, all right. So you see Marcus Strymon just saying I've disabled Mackie, but still, So make sure that that it's not another script that's being used in the MIDI remote, or if you go to the studio setup here, that you don't have any other device. And if you're not using the Mackie control protocol, try to remove it as well. Make sure it didn't get reassigned to another MIDI port. All right, so Val wants everyone to whack the like button. All right, Val asks how to disable all effects tracks with no input of sends. Okay, so let's just create an effects track here that's not connected anywhere. And then I'll create one that is connected. Okay, so we can see that these are all going to the connected reverb, and we have one reverb with no connection. So let's see if we could do this maybe in the Project Logical editor. I'm not sure if we can, but we'll give it a try. Okay, so we could select the effect channel. I'm not sure if we could specify. I don't think that there's a way to specify, but I'll try. Transform. Yeah, I don't know of a way to do that. I could see if I could play around with it some more over the weekend, but I don't know a way to disable effects channels that don't have anything routed to them, or to select them to disable. But I'll play around with it over the holiday weekend here. All right. Michael Teams is confirming what we all know, that Nick is a rock star. All right, so Avli Music Productions. Hi, Greg. Is there a way to route the sound of Very Audio and Media Bay to a Q-Mix so the performer is going to be able to hear what I'm editing in the control room? Phone channel preview is active. So I think that what you could do is just in the headphone. So say if you're sending it to the vocalist, we go to the vocals here, just send them the mix instead of their individual Q mix. And then I believe that would, so you could do that, but let's go to the phones channel here as well and see if, let me just make sure I have a phones channel defined. Okay. So we go to the phones channel. Instead of their Q, just try sending the phones channel the mix right here in the control room. So, a lot of times you may be sending them to Q in the phones channel, but just try sending the mix, and I think they will hear your Very Audio edits, and basically they'll be hearing what you hear in their headphones. All right, John Costigan from Kenosha, Wisconsin wants everyone to please utilize the like button. I'm going to post the Zoom link one more time. Everyone's pets are happy. All right, we have Recyclop sending greetings from Finland. All right, so Rick Hendricks says, Converse Sound Studio, Meridian, Connecticut. Is there any publications that translate Pro Tools terminology to Cubase terminology using Cubase 14 Pro? Love the Pro Tools preset and the preferences. So I don't know of a specific document that does that, but if, you could always reach out to me at clubcubase@steinberg.de, or if you're like, what is this function called in Cubase? I do this. But just let us know, because often, we're very busy kind of coming up with new versions. So we don't necessarily do, a detailed analysis of transition guides with other DAWs because we're busy making our own. So, all right, so we have Soren on from Sweden. All right, we have Jay from Secret Studios asking if the Zoom is today or Friday, so we'll be doing it today. Friday, I'll take the day off for the holiday. You see, Tim K just realized that he could have two popped out chat windows, one that's real time and one that's on Greg's time. All right. All right, so we see in frequency, question from Alon says in frequency EQ when clicking on sideband in audition mode, it sounds mono instead of stereo. It's not the same as in other EQ where you isolate side channels. Why is that? All right, so let's take a listen to it. So say if we let's say, well, all right, so I'll just put the frequency EQ on. All right, so let's put band 3 into mid side. All right, so here's the middle part. So that's the mid, and let's do the sides. So, I mean, it sounds pretty sides to me. Versus so when you do this, I mean, that's definitely kind of the sides of my headphones versus that's very pronounced mid part. So if I grab this, so I'll put them on same frequency here. So it's so it definitely sounds like sides to me, and try it on like a quick acoustic guitar, like a stereo guitar. I'll just open up another quick project here. So I'll try this, has some more kind of panning elements in it.
You wished it all away, and I'm left here for 1,000 years and a day. You were the party, the big event. I was your everything. Now I'm uninvited. I'm on the outside looking in. You put the clothes.
So same frequencies, we can hear the sides there. Let's go to the mids. So there it's very apparent. So mid part. And now the sides. So it seems like it's working as expected from you there. All right. All right, so Mark Raven says lately Cubase 14 has been the conduit that connects his insanity with his creativity, and he's creating in realms I have feared to venture prior. Thank you to the development team. That's great, kind words. I'll make sure to pass that comment along. All right, so Al Bulger asks, I record a MIDI part on a keyboard with expression, wah wah pedal, delete it, but the expression is not deleted. Why is this a setting perhaps? All right, so let's say if we record a MIDI part, so I'm not sure if the MIDI part is in the instrument or not, but let's say if I want to come over, let's say if we go to our piano, all right, so I will, let's say I'll just, all right, so I'm gonna just play we'll record some MIDI. And I'll hit my sustain pedal here. I'll move my modulation wheel. Volume control. All right. So now when I delete, so we can see all of the events in the editor here. So if we want to look at my modulation, we see the pitch bend data. We will see that we're going to have modulation. We will have our sustain pedal. So we'll go to controller 64. So we'll just, our sustain. So when I erase the event, all of those, everything that's in that event is contained. Now, if you had a plugin, so let's say if it was a wah effect, so let's say if I come here and while we're playing, I grabbed an insert of a wah. So now if I recorded this as automation, all right, so now so that's going to show up as probably our automation. So let's say if I erase this event, it looks like we could still have that automation because that automation is on the track level and not in the event. So, you could still have, because like if it's an audio effect that's on the MIDI, that's not within the MIDI event itself. So, and if we wanted to just come over, we could say, let's, show used automation, and then, so we'll say, and then, so the automation for effects on the track are not contained necessarily in the actual MIDI event, but MIDI CCs should automatically be working. All right. All right, so InDrop asks, hi Greg, is it possible to have the MIDI controller lanes, velocity, sustain, etc. disabled by default on the key editor? I just want to see more of the piano roll in the lower zone. All right, so let's take a look. I think it's whatever setting you had last. So I think if we right click, we could remove this lane. And then and this may be on a project per project basis. So let me just jump over to this, and you could always, and then once you save that setting, it will, once you save the project, at that point it should be retained, but just kind of right click in this area. And then if you're starting with a template, you could have your template with that setting, and that should be recalled for you. So Tireman Guitars says, what is the Zoom meeting about? So it's basically just allows us to get together as a group, and we could actually meet the other attendees, and we usually have just great discussions. And sometimes we'll have different artists will make appearances. I think I have someone that's lined up for December to kind of end up the year. Okay. So we see, and then something else with that was maybe going back to, let's say, the question on the MIDI data. So let me just activate this. I'll show something else that it could be. All right, because MIDI information we can sometimes record on top of itself. So if we see that, we look at our MIDI part here, and we'll just say, okay, we look at this MIDI part, and we listen to it. All right, so, but if I now record, all right, and we see this, what could happen is you could have different tracks. So this is like when I recorded the modulation wheel, because my MIDI settings were set to new parts as opposed to merge. I have two parts that are kind of stacked on top of each other. But if this is set to merge for my MIDI record modes, now when I record the MIDI CC data, it's recorded directly into the event as MIDI CC data. But if it's set to new parts and we hit record, it will just record over top of it. And then if you grab the glue gun, you can hold down the Alt or Option key and merge the events afterwards. So if it was MIDI data, it may have been recorded over top, which is the default behavior to set it to new parts. So you can go to the MIDI record modes, and if it's two different events are stacked on top of each other. Okay. Okay, Timing Guitars is saying hi to Stella. And Mark is saying Stella's in a great mood today. See, Roland Stuff says, thanks, Greg. I really like the idea of unmixing drums, which I have sometimes, which have themselves been unmixed from the full song in SpectralLayers. Just actually wanting to change the kick sound. I'm impressed. Okay, sorry, my chat field just jumped. All right. All right, so we see from Tiring Guitar says, only downside so far to Cubase 14 is my PreSonus fader port wasn't working properly like in 13. So, you may have to just go into, I'm not sure how you had the PreSonus fader port set up, but it could be check in 13 because you may have just added a device here, and you may just have to kind of add, and sometimes you could have preset scripts from different companies, or if it's utilizing Mackie control, you could come over here and you could just make that connection again, and that's going to be in a studio to studio setup. And we see Al just says that he's playing a Kronos guitar patch with wah and a Kronos, and I often get it wrong. Yeah. Okay, and we see Mark Rabin saying that Stella will be on Zoom. All right, looking forward to seeing Stella. All right, so we see YMIR ask, hey Greg, I was wondering if there's a potential for our personal samples to one day appear in the sample section in the Media Bay tab one day. Media Bay is great, but for organization would be cool. Cheers. So if you, all of your samples can be organized here. So what you could do, because you have a full file browser. So if you wanted to, like where you see all the pretty icons, what you could do here is just go to the file browser and say, oh, I really like this particular folder. And you can say, okay, I want to go to here. And this is, you could right click and add to favorites. So when you go here, you could just say, I want to go to my favorites and I'm looking for drum one shots. So you can add them as favorites folders. You can't really add a pretty picture. But if you want to quickly organize everything, you could just come right over here, and once you go into the file browser, right click and add to favorites, and then recall and have your samples organized and tagged as you see fit. All right, Timing Guitar says he's really been loving the Imager plugin. All right, so we see, hi Greg, could you explain what Windows on ARM is, please? So there's a new processor. It's kind of first came out. It's kind of the later generations of processors, which is like the Snapdragon processors. So you see those in the latest Microsoft Surface computers. So and it's kind of a similar concept to, it's kind of a low power, high energy, or it's a low power, high performance processor. And so it's very similar to what Apple Silicon is on the Apple platform. So it's not by Intel or AMD. It's it's generated by it's a Snapdragon. So I think it's Qualcomm Snapdragon is the name of the processor, I think. And Cubase has a public preview that's available for that. So it's a new kind of a new processor type. So Steinberg, as usual, is kind of on top of different performance standards and new standards that offer great performance for our users. All right, so we see PR says, hi Greg, I want to know if you're working on solutions for new generation Intel CPU performance issues. Build a Windows 11 new PC with an i9 14900K. In Cubase 13, got quite annoying CPU issues. Thank you. So, right, that there's certain limitations, like if we put 16 inserts on one track, that one track could only access one processor. It's just how the processing works. The very first time that the i9s came out with efficiency and performance cores, we were recommending turning off the efficiency cores. With version 13. We could utilize all of the cores automatically. The user doesn't have to do anything. So there's nothing, so if you have a project And, one instrument, it can utilize, for the most part, a single instrument can utilize a single core. Some instruments, like Hallian Sonic, Groove Agent, can utilize multiple CPU cores. But a lot of instruments don't, and people assume if they load up 16 sounds in a single instrument that it's a Cubase threading issue, but it's just that that particular instrument can't access more than one core. So there's some just how the processing occurs that's out of our control. Let me clear my throat. But, you can have, great performance, and, we work very closely with Intel and AMD and, Qualcomm to make sure that we're actually, getting as much as we can out of their particular processors. Gareth is sharing good words of wisdom on frequencies and mixing and gain staging. All right. Wonderful to see Nick on. All right. All right, so we see Captenergy Music on. All right, Anthony Jose Amati says many popular DAWs offer stem separation for more than just vocals, but Cubase currently supports only vocal stems. Any plans for a better integrated separator? So I realize that when other companies are doing that, they're just utilizing kind of an off-the-shelf third-party solution, and I think that the tools that you have within SpectralLayers are going to be far superior to what you have. So, you could get SpectralLayers Pro and have the best performance on any systems. So, all right. Anthony Jose Amati asks, is there any plan to integrate a basic version of EST Live into Cubase soon, enabling it to be effectively used for live performance on stage? So we have lots of people that are using Cubase Live on stage currently. So if you, probably the most demanding stage show that's ever been put on tour is probably the Hans Zimmer Live, and I remember Hans telling you that the 19th member of the band is always Cubase, and Cubase doesn't mess up. All right, and Anthony Jose Amati asks, can we get an eagle eye view of the timeline in the mixing console to easily move the cursor, locator, or loop sections directly from that view? All right, so if we go to our mix console, one of the things that you could do is we could right click, and then you could actually see time displays. So, and right from here, you could just navigate kind of the play position that you want in your particular project. So if you wanted to start at measure 35, we could just come right over here and adjust and play back from measure 21. So you could see that right there. So if you don't see the timeline, you could just come over here and make sure that the time displays option is checked in the mix console. I know we had some, I'm going to post the Zoom link. We'll be starting in about 20 minutes. I know we had some questions I want to get that were mailed in, so we'll get to those. All right, let me open up project. Okay, so the first question we had, is about the time display, which we just showed. All right, next question. And we had this question about taking out, this from the last live stream, about taking out the headphone, or like the headphone bleed of the click track on a track. And I think it was Bob Swade who sent this. So let's listen to it. So we'll hear like the click track in the recording. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. then we hear the click track kind of throughout the recording here. All right, so the question was how to get rid of that. So what we're going to do is use SpectralLayers Pro. So I'm going to select this. We will go to our extensions, and let's go to SpectralLayers. All right, and we're lucky to have just a great little part here at the beginning. All right, so we're going to listen to the click track here. All right, so I'm going to grab kind of all frequencies. We'll do our time range selection. And okay, so and now what I want to do is go to my modules. And we will say we're going to go to noise. And let's go ahead and we'll see denoise. And we're going to register the noise from the selection and then click apply, and I'm just going to do like 80% removal. All right, so now when we listen, let me just take this off. We just apply it to the file here. So basically we learned the click track frequencies, and now as we play the file back, you hear that the click track is so the click track that was bleeding through. And I'll undo it. The click track there. So let's redo it. So we could just kind of do a lot of great work just kind of taking it out, and we could adjust a percentage higher than that. All right, so next question. Is there a way to see the clipping indicators, something similar to seeing the waveform on an audio file? Let it be shown on the output track for any other track. So I will have visibility of the whole track, levels, and clipping during the work. So the question, and they kind of had shared a photograph of this, and they wanted like if the track was being sent to, I'll just remove the extension on this. I'll revert this quickly. So if they wanted to, if the track was being sent to a group and there was clipping somewhere, that they would see it on the timeline. So there really isn't a way to do that because the group itself doesn't contain anything. So let's say we're playing our guitar part here. All right, and we're sending this to the group, and let's say our group, we're going to send too much gain on our group. So we'll come over here to pre, and we'll add gain. So let's say, so we can hear kind of that clipping. So we're not going to see anything here because there's no actual data, but if you want it to, you could come over to like the inserts, and let's open up like your Supervision plugin, and then we have a wave scope here. So we'll just choose our wave scope. So we can see that this is immediately clipping, and then if I bring the gain down, you can see kind of the result of what's going on when like this track is soloed in the waveform. So you don't see it on the project window, but you could see it very easily here. So this is the result of the gain. So if I set this to back to our normal level, we can see that the result of the gain changes, and the gain structure we could see here in the wave scope so we can see how hot the actual waveform would be. All right, so we had a question, is there a way to place the transport bar in the upper zone? So let's come over here. I think that if we just go, let's say, to our settings, that we can, let's see if there's the transport. Let's just see if there's transport controls. So you can place the transport at the top. So if you just right click in the area, you could just see the transport controls right there. And you could also have the audio performance meter. So I will move this up to like our left divider, and now I can see my performance meter right there. So we can say, okay, so the transport and the performance meters can both be just checked right here so that they could be in the upper zone. So transport controls, audio performance meters, and to get there, just right click and you could see those elements at the top. Okay, we have a question. I'm running Cubase 14 Pro on Windows 11, and SpectralLayers 11 loads separately but does not appear as an extension, although Melodyne and other ARA extensions do show. So generally, if you don't see it as an extension, the only times I've seen it not show up as an extension when it's installed is when the VST3 plugin was installed into a different folder, not the standard VST3 plugin folder. So check to make sure that the VST3, if you do reinstallation, that you didn't manually move the VST3 folder or the SpectralLayers plugin, and that's kind of the link to make it work within Cubase as an ARA extension. So check that, and I think that if you moved it, that would solve the problem for you. Okay, so we have a question. The patch Big Dirty Pad in Dark Planet, so this patch here, just says, so it says it's in Dark Planet instrument, so we'll get open this, and this is an instrument that comes with Absolute 6, so let's come over here. All right, so we come, we can see, all right, so I want to start a song by gliding from D3 to D1 with it, but when done once and the second time around, it sits at D1 to D1. All right, so I'm just going to set the glide time here. So let's say, okay, and I think I created maybe a quick MIDI part here. Okay, so let's say, so we look at this, and okay, so we have, let's say, our MIDI notes here. All right, and I'm just gonna quantize these real quick. And we'll duplicate this a couple of times and see. And we'll see that if it returns, I'll put this into quick loop. So it seems to be working as I would expect it for the glide. So let me know if I'm doing anything different. All right, and then we have a second question. If I create a chord track and then later transpose the song with the transpose track, so it says if I create a chord track, let's say C, A minor, F, G, then later transpose the song with the transpose track -4, it'll still say C, A minor, F, G. Do you have a smart way of switching the chord track down 4 half steps? All right, so let's look at our chord track. All right, so when we do a transpose track, it doesn't actually move the events until until it's written in. So it kind of just plays it back transpose. So let's say we have our chord track that's laid out for us. If we wanted to transpose the events in the chord track, we could select all of the events, and you could right click and select all events. And then if we want to disable the scale, so don't select the scale, and then we could choose to transpose here. So let's say we want to go C, so let's say if we want that in the key of F, so we could just come right over here to the right hand side. I'm not sure why it doesn't show up on the left hand side where you think you have like 5 parameters, but this one is fixed to the right hand side. But if you have the scale selected as well, it won't show up. So try just to select the chords and not the scale, and then you could transpose directly here and the scale will update. All right, let's jump back to live questions. Thanks. And again, you could send questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. So let me just go ahead and paste our Zoom meetup, which will start in about 6 minutes. See Gareth saying day off for Greg. Woohoo. So see Jazz Dudes has posted a video of Harry Gregson Williams using Cubase. So yeah, helped Harry for 20 years or so. And Gareth says apparently even Igor Stravinsky used Cubase. All right, so we see Sable won't be able to join us for Zoom. We'll miss you. I was really looking forward to your Black Friday gadgets. So, but we'll get it next time, Sable. All right. So John Lee is just asking, is it possible to disable the vertical zoom plus mouse wheel in Cubase 14? I'd like to use the key command for something else. So I don't think that it is. I'll take a look and see. It's usually under preferences and maybe tool modifiers. So let's say if we have maybe the select tool. So some of those are fixed. Some of the modifiers with specific tools we can change here, but I think that is just a fixed part of the program. So where you could zoom, using kind of the mouse scroll wheel, so we could choose to navigate. We could zoom vertically with Control plus Shift. So I think that's kind of a non-assignable function. So if we want to navigate, we want to zoom in and out, or zoom, if we want to zoom vertically. So let's say if we're here and we want to zoom vertically and then hold down Shift or zoom horizontally with the Control or Command, and zoom vertically with the Shift plus Control Command. So I think that's fixed and not changeable, but you could probably change it. If you let me know, John, what other function you want to change it to, we may be able to, with a different tool, you might be able to modify that. All right, so we see Bratman Studio wishing everyone a happy Thanksgiving in U.S. Says, Greg, what's your take on mixing or tracking with or without a subwoofer? Thanks, and see you on the Zoom. So a lot of times, like one of my friends and two of my friends that, went back and forth with the subwoofers, and their issue was always like the phase relationship, like a single sub with two speakers. So I would always have it so that you could, mix with the sub on and off, and whether that's a control, like some would do that. But what I had two friends do that worked very successfully for them was to have a subwoofer to get around the phase issues that they always were concerned about, was to have two subwoofers for every speaker. So each speaker had its own subwoofer, and that seemed to, work very well for them, is instead of one subwoofer, just having two subwoofers, one for each channel. All right. All right, so you see Eric Fox just asks, says, hello, Greg. Is there a way to play MIDI keyboard in scale with Cubase with no wrong notes? So anything we play will be in the key of this song. All right, so all you'd have to do is, let's say if we go into our editor, we'll have our editor scale. So we go, so you'd probably want to create an event, double click to enter the editor, and you'll see the scale assistant. Here we could set the scale, so we can say, okay, I want this to be in D major, and we can say snap live input. So now any note that you play that's not in D major will get moved to a note that is in D major. All right. All right, PMO Sullivan asks, can the lower zone be opened in a separate monitor or other window? On a 17-inch, it's pretty crowded. My eyesight might also be getting worse. Yeah, I understand. So you could disable the lower zone, and then when you want to, if you just hit the keyboard shortcut, there's what you could do if you didn't want to use the lower zone. So one is you could see this little arrow and kind of pop it out to a full screen window or to a separate window that can be full screen, and you could tuck it back into the lower zone. So if we're in the mixer, I could just say let's go full screen with the mixer, or again kind of just choose to tuck it back away as needed. But there is a preference where you could just say, okay, when I come over and when it's under editors, and we can say double click opens in a window. So we can hit apply. So now when I double click on an event, that will open it full screen, and then you could just hit the enter key to close the editor. All right. So we have a question. Is there a way that I could record the MIDI from one plugin on a track to a different one so that the other plugin listens to what is played? So if we want to do this, we could do it on a MIDI track. So let's come over. Let's just say I want to add a MIDI track. Okay, and I want this to go out to Hallian Sonic here. All right, so we'll go to our VSTI. Okay, so let's say this MIDI track here, I want to play this Dark Planet sound. Okay, so we have this. So we'll put this on MIDI channel 1. And then let's say I want to add another instrument. So we could do this with the instrument rack. So we'll say, okay, I want this to be, here, I'll just do like an FM lab preset here. So now, so if I want to layer those two sounds from one track, what we could do is I'll play this. We go to our MIDI sends, and I'll just say, let's take this and send it out. And now we could just send this particular out to your and now so this one track can be sent to different instruments if we want. So if we want to make this one softer here, so we can send up to 4 instruments that way. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start the Zoom. So once again, we will not have a live stream on Friday because of the Thanksgiving holiday in the US. All right, so I'm going to start the Zoom. I just posted the link again. And it's a great way to meet other people on the live stream. It's always wonderful discussions. I'm looking forward to hearing what people have gotten for, if they've gotten any Black Friday sales, if you've experiences with Cubase. I'm looking forward to seeing Stella. So let's go ahead and we will start. All right, we see Peter from Montreal joining. See Gareth on. Jan, all right. See Dallas LaRue joining. We're hearing Daza Direct's audio coming through. I'm just going to mute it here really quick. We'll unmute in just a minute. Yep, we can hear you. It's still very kind of muffled. Maybe is it sound? Maybe other people comment see if it's muffled or not. All right, we'll give it a couple more minutes. Let people get logged in. Then I'll end the live stream. All right. It's a little better, yeah. Okay. All right, we see Mark Rabin joining. Giving her a couple minutes here. All right, we have Nick. Great to see Nick on. All right. We all see Stella. Yes. right, I'll end the live stream here in just about a minute. All right, so we have Sway TV on. All right, we have Rajesh joining. Great to see Catherine on. All right, so we have Rick Shannon and Michael Teams. Yeah, I think that might have been a replay from someone else's computer, Mark. All right, I'm going to end the live stream so we don't have double audio coming. Bear with me just for a second. All right, so the live stream is ended. All right. All right, how's everyone doing?